The crisp air of the city morning carried the faint scent of ozone and exhaust, a familiar perfume to those who lived in the age of heroes. On a rooftop overlooking a bustling commercial district, Izuku Midoriya stood, a solitary figure against the vast canvas of the sky. His gaze, however, was not on the horizon or the sprawling cityscape, but intently fixed on a single point below. Ochaco Uraraka was laughing, her whole face lighting up with a warmth that seemed to challenge the very chill in the air. For Izuku, the world narrowed to that smile, a gravitational pull far more potent than any quirk. His heart, a frantic drum against his ribs, had long since surrendered to her. It wasn't a gentle affection or a passing crush, it was a profound, all-consuming devotion that colored his every thought and action. When she was near, his mind became a chaotic scroll of her features. The way her brown hair framed her face, the sparkling of her eyes when she was determined, the soft sound of her voice that could calm the storm of his anxieties. He was a fortress of analyses and strategy for everyone else, but for her, he was simply a boy drowning in a sea of unspoken adoration. The memory of their first encounter with the villain known as Stain was a scar etched not just on his body, but deeper, on his soul. It was an event that had fundamentally reshaped the nature of his feelings, transforming admiration into a fierce, protective need. It had been a chaotic, blood-soaked night in a back alley of Hasa. The air was thick with the metallic tang of fear and the coppery scent of blood. Izuku, fueled by a desperate need to save his friend Ida, had thrown himself into a maelstrom of violence. But then he saw her. Uraraka, having followed to help, had arrived, her face a mask of shock and resolve as she faced the terrifying figure of the hero killer. In that frozen moment, time shattered for Izuku. Stain was not just a villain, he was an existential threat to the single most important person in his world. A primal, raw energy, different from the controlled bursts of One for All, erupted within him. It was a fire stoked by pure, undiluted terror, the terror of losing her. His body moved before his mind could form a coherent plan. The green lightning that breathed him crackled with a new, desperate intensity. Every cell, every nerve ending screamed a single, silent command: protect her. As Stain lunged, a crimson phantom of death, Izuku became a green blur of motion. He wasn't fighting to subdue a criminal. He was a force of nature placing himself between a hurricane and its intended target. The world dissolved into a series of instinctual movements. A kick meant to decapitate was intercepted by a shattering blow from his arm. The paralyzing glare of the hero killer was met with a roar that was pure defiance, a sound that came from a place deeper than his lungs. His love for her was no longer a quiet, fluttering thing in his chest. It was a shield, a weapon, a supercharge to his very spirit. He took cuts that he wouldn't have otherwise, pushing his body past its breaking point, because every wound he sustained was one she was spared. The sight of her, safe and unharmed behind him, was the only anesthetic he needed. When the battle was over, and the pro-heroes had secured the scene, the adrenaline faded, leaving behind a bone-deep exhaustion and a pain so acute it was almost beautiful. As he lay broken on the cold ground, his vision swimming, he felt her gentle hands on his face, her worried tears falling like blessed rain. In the moment, the pain was irrelevant. He had saved her. He had stood as our bulwark. The intense, overwhelming love he felt was no longer a secret he kept for himself. It was a truth written in the bruises on his skin and the shattered bones in his arms, a testament to the lengths he would go to ensure her safety. In the weeks that followed, his feelings only deepened, growing roots that intertwined with his very purpose of becoming a hero. His notebook, once filled with dispassionate analyses of quirks, now had pages dedicated to her. He noted the way she floated through the air with effortless grace, the specific tilt of her head when she was concentrating, the way she would press her fingertips together when she was nervous. He trained with a new, ferocious intensity, not just for All Might's legacy, but for a future where he would always be strong enough to stand by her side, to be the hero she deserved. He found excuses to be near her, to bask in the simple radiance of her presence. During joint training exercises, he would unconsciously position himself to watch her back, his body always angled towards her, a constant, silent sentinel. He would leave packets of her favorite tea on her desk, his face burning crimson as he scurried away before she could see him. The love was a physical ache, a sweet, constant pressure behind his breastbone. It was in the way his breath hitched when she casually brushed against him, in the way her name, unspoken, was a prayer on his lips every morning and a dream every night. He was Izuku Midoriya, and he was hopelessly, utterly, and beautifully in love with Ochaco Uraraka, a silent epic written in the quiet spaces between their shared battles and stolen glances. The world had narrowed to a single, blood-soaked point. The coppery scent of iron filled the alley, a stark contrast to the distant, cheerful city lights. Time, which had shattered moments before, now seemed to congeal into a thick, syrupy nightmare. Stain, the hero killer, was not a man. He was a vortex of death, and he had fixed his predatory gaze on Ochaco Uraraka. Izuku's mind, usually a whirlwind of analyses and strategy, went utterly, terrifyingly silent. There was no plan, no calculation of percentages. There was only a white-hot, all-consuming imperative that screamed from the very core of his being, not her. Never her. As Stain lunged, a crimson blur with a glint of murderous steel, Izuku's body reacted. It was not the controlled, precise application of one for all he practiced. This was something raw, primal, and terrifying. A torrent of green lightning, wild and untamed, erupted from him, scorching the ground at his feet. The power didn't just crackle, it roared, a physical manifestation of his sheer, desperate terror. He moved faster than he ever had, a green comet intercepting a red demon. The first impact was a concussive blast of force. Izuku's reinforced boot met Stain's descending katana not with a clang, but with a sound like a thunderclap. The shockwave rattled the dumpsters lining the alley. Pain, sharp and immediate, lanced up his leg, but it was a distant echo, drowned out by the frantic drumming of his heart. His eyes, wide and burning with emerald fire, were locked not on his opponent, but on Uraraka, ensuring she was still safe, still behind the fragile barrier of his body. Stain was a phantom, recoiling and instantly shifting his stance. His tongue flipped out, a grotesque, reptilian gesture. "You have spirit, child." His voice was a gravelly whisper that seemed to crawl from the shadows themselves. "But spirit is just more blood to spill." Izuku didn't hear the words. He only saw the threat. He launched himself forward again, a series of frantic, powerful jabs. Full cowl, 8%. But it felt different. The power was laced with a frantic, protective energy. He wasn't aiming to subdue, he was aiming to destroy the danger. Each punch was meant to shatter bone, to drive this monster away from her. Stain flowed around the blows like smoke, his own blade a silver serpent seeking an opening. A searing line of fire opened on Izuku's bicep. Another on his thigh. He barely flinched. Each cut was a badge of honor, a price he willingly paid. This one for her. And this one. And this one. He could feel the paralyzing aura of Stain's quirk beginning to creep into his limbs, a cold numbness starting at the wounds. Panic threatened to surge, but then he saw Uraraka's face from the corner of his eye, pale, terrified, but resolute. Her fear for him was a catalyst. A guttural roar tore from his throat, and the green lightning flared, burning away the creeping paralysis. He pushed to 10%, the strain making his muscles scream, but the numbness receded. Stain's eyes widened a fraction, a flicker of surprise. This boy was fighting not just his blade, but his very quirk, with pure, unadulterated will. Izuku used the moment. He aimed high, then dropped, sweeping a lead wrapped in crackling energy at Stain's ankles. The hero killer leapt, but Izuku was already in the air, having used a burst of power to propel himself upward. He was a brawler, unrefined, but his movements were fueled by a desperation that made him unpredictable. He crashed into Stain mid-air, wrapping his arms around the villain in a tackle that carried them both across the alley. They slammed into a brick wall, the impact sending dust and debris raining down. Izuku's head swam, his vision spotting. He felt a knee drive into his gut, and he gasped, his grip loosening. Stain twisted free, his katana flashing downward. There was no time to dodge. All Izuku could do was throw up his arm, the one already lacerated and bleeding. He activated one for all in a concentrated burst, not to strike, but to reinforce. The blade met his forearm with a sickening crunch, biting deep, but stopping before it severed the bone. Agony, white and blinding, exploded behind his eyes. He screamed, but it was a sound of defiance, not surrender. Through the pain, his other hand shot out, fingers clamping like a vice around Stain's wrist, holding the katana in place. They were locked in a gruesome stalemate, faces inches apart. Stain's bloodshot eyes bore into his, seeing not a hero in training, but a feral, wounded animal protecting its young. Izuku's gaze was unwavering, a green inferno of pure resolve. He would die here, his blood mingling with the filth of the alley, before he let this man take one more step toward her. His body was breaking. His arm was a ruin of torn muscle and fractured bone. His energy was fading. But his will was an unbreakable diamond. He poured every last ounce of his strength, every iota of his love for the girl trembling behind him, into that single, desperate hold. He would not fall. He could not. For her, he was immovable. For her, he was invincible. This was not a fight for victory. It was a testament, written in blood and lightning, of a love so intense it could stall death itself. The stalemate was a grotesque sculpture of pain and willpower. Izuku's arm, impaled by the katana, screamed in white-hot agony, a constant, searing reminder of his mortality. Stain's face, contorted in a rictus of fanatical fury, was inches from his own, the stench of blood and iron thick between them. The hero killer's strength was immense, a seasoned predictor's power bearing down on a winded, but defiant, cub. Izuku's muscles trembled violently, his one for all flickering like a dying star. He could feel the cold numbness of Stain's quirk seeping back into his limbs through the fresh, deep wound. His vision began to tunnel, the edge was darkening. The thought was a final, desperate whisper in his mind. "I'm sorry, Uraraka." I couldn't, but then, he heard it. Not a scream, not a cry for help, but a single, choked sob from behind him. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated fear for him. That sound was a spark thrown into the last reserves of his spirit. It ignited something deeper than training, deeper than one for all, something that resided in the very core of the boy who would never, ever give up on someone he loved. A sound, low and guttural, ripped from his throat, tearing through the alley's oppressive silence. It was not a human sound, it was the roar of a force of nature. The flickering green lightning didn't just rip night, it ignited. A massive wave of emerald energy erupted from his body, so intense it was almost blinding. The air itself seemed to crackle and warp around him. The percentage, the careful calculations, they were all meaningless now. This was 100% of his heart, 100% of his soul, given physical form. The sheer, uncontrolled force of the blast was catastrophic. The katana, still embedded in his arm, was violently wrenched from Stain's grasp, the steel singing as it was torn away. The hero killer himself was thrown backwards as if hit by a freight train, his body crashing through a stack of wooden crates and slamming into the far wall with a sickening crunch of brick and bone. He lay there for a moment, stunned, his body broken in ways it had never been before. Izuku did not stop. Pain was a concept that no longer applied to him. His body was a vessel for a single purpose. He pushed off from the ground, the pavement cratering beneath his feet. He crossed the distance in an instant, a green comet of pure vengeance. His good fist, wrapped in a maelstrom of destructive power, swung in a wide, devastating arc. It did not connect with Stain directly, the air pressure it generated was enough. The wall behind Stain exploded outward, and the villain was hurled through the new opening into the adjacent, deserted street, his body tumbling limply across the asphalt. Izuku stood panting, his entire frame wreathed in the dying embers of his power. Smoke rose from his costume and his skin. His injured arm hung uselessly at his side, blood streaming down his fingers to pool at his feet. He was a shattered thing, held upright only by the last fading echoes of adrenaline. Through the haze of his fading consciousness, he saw Stain stir. The hero killer, with an inhuman effort, pushed himself to his feet. He was a broken puppet, one arm dangling, his movements jerky and pained. He cast one last, long, incredulous look at the green-haired boy who had fought with the fury of a god, then melted back into the shadows of the city, escaping into the night, defeated not just physically, but spiritually. The moment the threat was truly gone, the power fled Izuku's body completely. The lightning vanished. The strength left his legs. He crumpled to his knees, then onto his side, his vision swimming. The last thing he saw before darkness claimed him was Uraraka's face, streaked with tears, as she and Ida rushed to his side. Her hands, gentle and warm, touched his face, her sobs the only sound in the sudden, ringing silence. They were all there, together, broken, exhausted, but alive. And as he slipped into unconsciousness, a single, peaceful thought crossed his mind. He had saved her. Nothing else mattered. The sterile, antiseptic air of the hospital was a stark contrast to the metallic blood and grime of the alley. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a pale, unforgiving glow on Ochaco Uraraka's face. She lay in the wide bed, small and fragile, her skin several shades too pale. And the fourth drip was taped to her hand, and the steady beep of a heart monitor was a rhythmic testament to her survival. She had suffered from severe shock and quirk exhaustion, the doctors said, her body shutting down from the overwhelming terror and strain. Izuku sat rigidly in the chair beside her bed, his own body a tapestry of bandages and aches. His right arm was encased in a heavy cast, a dull, throbbing pain pulsing in time with his heartbeat. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the gnawing, frantic worry clawing at his insides. He hadn't left her side since the pro-heroes had deposited them there hours ago. His mother had been called, All Might had been notified, but he had refused to move, his green eyes fixed on her sleeping form, as if his gaze alone could will color back into her cheeks. He must have dozed off, because the next thing he knew, a soft, rustling sound jolted him awake. His eyes snapped open to find hers, hazy with medication but undeniably conscious, looking back at him. Uraraka. He gasped, lurching forward in his seat, a fresh wave of pain shooting through his arm. You're awake. Are you okay? Does anything hurt? Should I call the nurse? He was a torrent of frantic questions, his words tumbling out in a rushed, breathless jumble. The relief of seeing her awake was so overwhelming that it short-circuited his usual careful filter. He was babbling, trying to fill the silence, to explain the unexplainable, to absolve himself of the guilt he felt for her being in the bed. It was so dangerous. I'm so sorry you were there. I didn't know what to do, he stammered, his hands clenching and clenching on his knees. His quirk, Stain's quirk, it let him taste blood, and he could see things in it. He knew from my blood. Izuku's voice dropped to a conspiratorial, horrified whisper, his eyes wide with the sheer weight of the secret he was accidentally unleashing. He was too panicked, too focused on her, to realize the Pandora's box he was opening. He was there. He wasn't just after Native Arita, he was testing me. He knew from the very first cut. He saw it in my blood. The change. The power. He knew I was all my hair. The moment the words left his lips, the world froze. The frantic energy drained from Izuku's body, leaving behind a cold, paralyzing dread. His blood ran cold. His jaw snapped shut so hard his teeth clicked. He stared at Uraraka, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated horror. The beeping of the heart monitor seemed to grow deafeningly loud in the suffocating silence. He had done it. He had broken his most sacred vow. He had told her the secret that could unravel everything, that put All Might, his own future, and everyone he cared about in unimaginable danger. And he'd done it not under torture, not in a moment of heroic sacrifice, but in a clumsy, sleep-deprived, worry-fueled babble. Ochaco's eyes, which had been soft with confusion and residual fear, widened. The haze of medication seemed to part, replaced by a dawning, earth-shattering comprehension. She wasn't just looking at her clumsy, kind-hearted classmate anymore. She was looking at the successor of the symbol of peace. The weight of that truth, the sheer magnitude of the trust and the danger he had just inadvertently placed in her hands, settled upon her, and her breath hitched in her throat. Izuku could only stare back, his own breath trapped in his lungs. The secret was out. The world had just irrevocably changed, and there was no taking it back. The silence in the hospital room was a physical presence, thick and heavy with the weight of the shattered secret. Izuku's face was ashen, his good hand trembling as it rose to cover his mouth, as if he could physically push the traitorous words back in. He had failed. He had broken his promise to All Might in the most careless way imaginable. Ochaco's eyes, wide and unblinking, were fixed on him. The initial shock was receding, replaced by a deep, swirling pool of emotions: awe, fear, and overwhelming, fierce protectiveness. She saw the utter terror in his eyes, the self-loathing that made him look so small in the chair. Slowly, deliberately, she pushed herself up on her elbows, ignoring the protest of her tired muscles. Her voice, when it came, was soft but unwavering, a steady anchor in the storm of his panic. "Dick." He flinched, unable to meet her gaze. "Midoriya," she said again, more firmly. He finally looked up, his eyes glistening with tears of shame. She offered him a small, fragile, but incredibly brave smile. "Your secret, it's safe with me. I promise. I won't tell a soul. Not ever." It wasn't just a reassurance, it was a vow. In the moment, she wasn't just his friend or his crush, she was his ally, his confidant, sworn to guard a truth more dangerous than any villain. Weeks later, the memory of that hospital room was a constant, humming undercurrent beneath the renewed normalcy of UA. The secret was a new, invisible thread binding them, making their shared glances longer, their silent understandings deeper. The guilt, however, still gnawed at Izuku. He couldn't carry this betrayal alone. He had to confess. He found All Might in his skeletal form, sipping tea in one of the faculty lounges. The words tumbled out in a rushed, miserable confession: the fight, his careless babbling, Uraraka's promise. He braced for anger, for disappointment, for revocation of the sacred power he carried. All Might was silent for a long moment, his sunken eyes looking out the window. When he spoke, his voice was not angry, but weary and layered with a profound, paternal concern. "Young Midoriya, this is a heavy burden you have unknowingly placed on young Uraraka's shoulders. The world of One for All is one of immense danger. It is not ideal to have someone so close to you, someone you care for so deeply, entangled in its secrets. It makes them a target. It complicates everything." The implication, the gentle phrasing of someone you care for so deeply, hit both Izuku and, unbeknownst to him, Uraraka, who had just been approaching the door to deliver a message from Mr. Aizawa. She froze, her hand hovering just inches from the knob, her cheeks instantly flooding with a scorching heat. Inside the room, Izuku's own face erupted into a spectacular blush, matching hers perfectly. He stammered, "All Might. We're not, I mean." A slow, knowing smile spread across All Might's gaunt face, cutting off his flustered denial. The worry was still there in his eyes, but it was now tempered with a flicker of fond amusement. He saw the pure, honest affection between his successor and the bright, gravity-defying girl, and he knew that scolding would not change what was already in their hearts. Perhaps it is fate, he mused, his tone shifting from stern mentor to something softer. And a hero must learn to trust his allies. He reached into a small case beside him and pulled out a sleek, technologically advanced device. It was a single gauntlet, crafted from a polished, dark blue alloy, with intricate circuitry tracing along its surface and a luminous green emitter set into the palm. "This," All Might said, handing it to a bewildered Izuku, "is from my niece, Melissa's shield. She called it an Energy Diffusion Glove. She designed it after studying the data from your fights. It's meant to help you channel and disperse the raw power of One for All more efficiently, to mitigate the backlash on your body. Think of it as a training wheel for your power output." Still blushing, his mind reeling from the emotional whiplash of the conversation, Izuku took the glove. It was surprisingly light. With a sense of reverence, he slipped it onto his uninjured left hand. It fit perfectly, humming with a faint, latent energy. The green emitter in the palm glowed softly, pulsing in sync with his own heartbeat. It felt right. Like a part of him we never knew was missing. It was a tool, a promise of greater control, a step forward, a gift from his mentor's family, given in a moment of understanding and acceptance. And as he flexed his fingers inside the cool metal, he dared a glance towards the door, his heart swelling with a confusing, wonderful mixture of hope, fear, and unwavering determination. The moment the Energy Diffusion Glove sealed around his wrist, a new kind of energy buzzed beneath Izuku's skin, different from the raw, chaotic power of One for All. It was a focused, technological hum, a promise of control. All Might gestured towards a specialized training dummy in the corner of the faculty lounge, its surface lined with sensors. "Go on, young Midoriya. A control test. Let's see what my brilliant niece has engineered for you." Izuku took a deep breath, his focus narrowing. He recalled the feeling of 5%, then 8%, the percentages that had become his comfort zone. But this was different. He needed to push it. He thought of the fight with Stain, the uncontrolled eruption of power. He needed to harness that, to master it. He clenched his gloved fist, and the green emitter in the palm flared to life, casting sharp shadows across the room. "One for All, 45%, he muttered, and the power answered, surging through him. But instead of the familiar, bone-jarring vibration, the glove whirred softly, the circuitry along the forearm glowing as it siphoned and streamlined the torrent of energy. It felt smooth, stable. His eyes widened in disbelief. 60%, he pushed further, his voice a whisper of awe. The green lightning crackled around him, but it was a contained storm, channeled perfectly through the device. The training dummy sensors began beeping frantically, registering a massive power buildup. 70%. He finally called out, and threw a punch. It wasn't the wild, destructive haymaker of his past. It was a precise, devastatingly powerful straight jab. A controlled shockwave, visible as a ripple of emerald energy, shot from the glove's emitter and slammed into the dummy. The impact was deafening, but focused. The dummy didn't shatter into a million pieces. It was punched clean off its base, a crater forming exactly where it had stood, the force directed perfectly forward with minimal backlash. Izuku stood firm, his body trembling only slightly, his arm intact. No pain. Just power. I did it, he breathed, staring at his gloved hands as if seeing it for the first time. All Might chuckled, a proud, raspy sound. Melissa designed it to withstand and optimize up to that level, yes. She may have been born Quirkles, he added, his voice softening with paternal pride, but her mind, her genius for support technology is a power all its own. She wanted to create tools to help heroes, in her own way. The revelation struck Izuku with a profound sense of kinship. She's Quirkles. Like you were, like I was, the connection was instant and powerful. A girl, without a quirk, using her brilliant intellect to reach into the world of heroes and change it. He felt a surge of immense respect and gratitude. She's amazing, he whispered, his voice filled with genuine reverence. From the doorway, Ochaco had witnessed the entire display, the incredible power, the control, the iron dick size. But when she heard the warmth in his voice as he spoke about this unknown, brilliant girl, this Melissa, a strange, unfamiliar pain twisted in her chest. It was small, sharp, and entirely unwelcome. Her smile, which had been so bright watching his success, faltered just a fraction. Soon after, they left All Might, the secret now a shared burden among the three of them. In the hallway, Izuku was practically vibrating with excitement. He tapped a small button on the glove's wrist, and with a series of soft, mechanical clicks, the advanced gauntlet folded and collapsed in on itself, transforming in seconds into a sleek, dark blue wristband that looked like a simple piece of sports gear. "It's incredible," he marveled, holding his wrist up. "I can carry it with me everywhere. I can train anywhere. With this, I can finally..." He was cut off as Ochaco suddenly stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him in a tight, impulsive hug. She buried her face in his chest for just a moment, the strange, jealous feeling melting away under the sheer, overwhelming joy of seeing him so happy and so empowered. She was hugging the boy who carried the world's greatest secret and its greatest power, who was now one step closer to mastering it, all thanks to a genius girl she'd never met. But in that moment, he was just her Dick, achieving another impossible dream. Izuku froze, his words dying in his throat. His face turned a shade of crimson that rivaled his shoes. He could feel the warmth of her through his uniform, the softness of her hair against his chin. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic, joyful rhythm that had nothing to do with One for All. Slowly, hesitantly, his good arm came up and wrapped around her, returning the hug, the simple wristband pressing gently against her back. It was a perfect, silent moment, a collision of soaring spirits and budding, unspoken feelings, sealed with an embrace under the bright, impartial lights of the UA hallway. The sun had long since dipped below the horizon, painting the UA grounds in shades of deep indigo and charcoal. From her dorm room window, Ochaco Uraraka had a clear, distant view of Gym Gamma, and tonight, like many recent nights, it was illuminated from within by a familiar, pulsating emerald light. It flickered and flared, casting long, dancing shadows through the high windows, a silent testament to the relentless drive of the boy inside. She leaned against the cool glass, a textbook on hero ethics forgotten on her bed. Her thoughts were not on legal codes or moral dilemmas, but entirely consumed by the green lightning flashing in the distance. It was a beacon of his determination, his struggle, his incredible power, and the immense, crushing weight he carried on his shoulders alone. Well, not entirely alone anymore, she thought, a secret warmth blooming in her chest. He had trusted her with it. Her mind drifted, unbidden, through a cascade of memories. The first day of school, his clumsy, earnest kindness when she'd been nervous about her family. The way he shattered his own body without a second thought to protect others during the battle trial. The USJ, where his strategic mind had shown even in the face of certain doom. The sports festival, where he had faced Todoroki with a conviction that changed everyone who witnessed it. But the memory that burned the brightest, the one that made her breath catch, was the alley in Hassa. The raw, primal scream that had torn from his throat. The way his power had detonated not for victory, but as a shield for her. The sight of him, broken and bleeding on the ground, his eyes finding hers with a look of pure relief. In the moment, he hadn't been the successor of All Might, he had been a boy who would move heaven and earth for her. A soft, incredulous sigh escaped her lips. Her cheeks felt warm. She thought about his constant mumbling, his endearing freckles, the way he always looked at her as if she were the one who hung the stars, not the other way around. She thought about the hospital, the terrifying secret he had accidentally shared, and the fierce, protective vow she had made in return. She thought about the hug in the hallway, the solid, reassuring feel of him, the frantic beating of his heart that had echoed her own. And then, it hit her. It wasn't just admiration for a fellow hero. It wasn't just the gratitude of a friend. It was something far deeper, far more terrifying, and infinitely more wonderful. The realization washed over her not like a crashing wave, but like a slow, rising tide, filling every part of her until she was buoyant with it. Her eyes widened, her hand coming up to rest against her rapidly warming cheek. She was in love with him. The words echoed in the silent, private space of her mind, simple and undeniable. She loved Izuku Midoriya. A soft, breathless laugh escaped her, tinged with the sheer, overwhelming absurdity and rightness of it all. She looked back out the window at the flickering green light, and her vision blurred with tears of pure, unadulterated feeling. The light in the gym wasn't just the glow of One for All anymore. It was the light of the boy she loved, pushing himself beyond his limits to become a symbol for everyone. And in that moment, watching his distant, relentless struggle, Ochaco Uraraka made another, quieter vow to herself. She would become stronger too. Strong enough to stand by his side, not just as a friend who knew his secret, but as a hero and perhaps, one day, the person who could help him carry the weight. The following day dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the secretive, electrically charged night. Under the pretext of a casual weekend walk, Ochaco found herself strolling alongside Izuku through a quieter part of Musita, away from the bustling city center and the ever-watchful eyes of their classmates. The air between them was different, charged with a new, unspoken tension that had nothing to do with One for All. Izuku, his movements slightly stiff from his all-night training session, rubbed the back of his neck. All Might and I. We were in Jingama until almost sunrise, he admitted, a yawn threatening to break through his words. The new glove, it's incredible. We were working on stabilizing the energy output at 45%. It's so much more efficient, but it requires a lot of focus. He launched into a familiar, mumbling analysis of the power dynamics, but his words were slower, his attention subtly, entirely, on the girl walking beside him. Ochaco listened with a soft smile, not really hearing the technical details, but loving the passionate, focused light in his eyes. She let him talk, her own heart thumping a nervous rhythm against her ribs. She had a plan, and with every step, her resolve solidified. Hey, Dick, she interrupted gently, her voice softer than usual. Come with me for a second. She led him off the main path, down a narrow lane flanked by cherry blossom trees, their petals creating a soft, pink carpet on the ground. They stopped in a small, secluded clearing, hidden from the world by the gentle canopy. The sounds of the city faded into a distant hum, leaving only the rustle of leaves and the sound of their own breathing. Izuku looked at her, his head tilted in curiosity. Uraraka. Is everything okay? She turned to face him fully, her hands clasped tightly in front of her to stop them from trembling. She took a deep, steadying breath, her brown eyes meeting his wide, green ones with an intensity that made his brain short-circuit. Dick, she began, her voice firm despite the blush creeping up her own neck. I've been thinking. A lot. About you. About us. She paused, gathering her courage. I really like you. More than just a friend. I think about you all the time, and I get so happy when I'm with you, and I love you, Izuku Midoriya. The world stopped. Izuku's mind, usually a whirlwind of heroic analyses and quirk theories, went completely, utterly blank. Every drop of blood in his body seemed to rush to his face, painting his skin a spectacular, deep shade of crimson. His freckles stood out like distant stars on a red giant. His jaw hung slack, and his eyes were so wide they threatened to pop out of their sockets. He was paralyzed, a statue of pure, unadulterated shock. A strangled, wheezing sound was the only thing that escaped his lips, a pathetic attempt at forming words that died in his constricted throat. He tried to move, to speak, to do anything, but his limbs refused to obey. He managed a jerky, frantic nod. Then another. His head bobbed up and down like a buoy in a stormy sea. He finally managed to force a single, choked, high-pitched syllable past his lips. Why? Why yes. He squeaked, the word barely audible. A radiant, breathtaking smile broke across Ochaco's face, erasing all her nervousness. Seeing him so completely flustered, so genuinely overwhelmed, filled her with a giddy, overwhelming affection. She didn't wait for a more eloquent response. She stepped forward, rose onto her toes, and pressed her lips to his in a soft, quick, but unmistakable kiss. It was over in a second, but for Izuku, time stretched into an eternity of pure, sensory overload. The softness of her lips, the faint scent of her shampoo, the warmth of her so close it was more overwhelming than any impact from One for All. As she pulled away, her own face flushed with happiness, she giggled softly at his utterly stunned expression. It's a secret, okay? She whispered, her eyes sparkling with a playful conspiracy. Let's not tell anyone. Especially Kekin and the others. I don't think we could handle the teasing. At least not for this semester. Izuku, still incapable of speech, could only manage another frantic, jerky nod. His brain had officially shut down, replaced by a singular, looping thought. She likes me. She kissed me. Uraraka kissed me. He was the successor of the world's greatest power, but in that moment, he was just a boy, red as a tomato and happier than he had ever been in his entire life, standing in a shower of cherry blossoms with the girl of his dreams. The walk back to UA was a blur of shared, secret smiles and blushing cheeks. The agreement was sealed not with a handshake, but with a silent, giddy understanding that buzzed between them like a lit wire. For a few precious days, this newfound, wonderful reality would be theirs alone, a secret world existing in the spaces between classes and the quiet moments in the hallways. The weighted One for All and the terror of staying were momentarily overshadowed by the terrifying, exhilarating joy of a first kiss. Back within the towering walls of the academy, the familiar routine took on a new, vibrant color. Izuku's training sessions, now often observed from a respectful distance by a certain gravity girl, were infused with a fresh, burning intensity. The Energy Diffusion Glove, now a constant presence as a simple wristband, was a reminder of his dual promises. To All Might, to master this power, and to himself, to become a hero worthy of the trust and affection Ochaco had placed in him. Each punch, each controlled burst of One for All, was no longer just for a distant, abstract ideal of peace. It was for her. To ensure the smile he now knew so intimately would never be erased by a threat, he was too weak to stop. He pushed 50%, then 55%, the glove humming in satisfaction as it channeled the torrential energy, his body learning, adapting, growing stronger alongside his resolve. It was during one of these sessions, with the sun beginning to set and painting Jim Gamma in hues of orange and gold, that All Might approached. He stood beside his successor, watching the young man's focused movements with a critical, yet immensely proud eye. Your control is improving exponentially, young Midoriya, he boomed in his muscular form, his voice echoing in the vast space. The synergy between your will and Melissa's invention is even better than I anticipated. Izuku lowered his gloved hand, panting slightly but with a steady grin. Thank you, All Might. I feel like I'm finally starting to understand the flow of it. Good, All Might said, his form shrinking back to his true, calm self with a soft puff of steam. He coughed into his fist before continuing, his voice lower but no less authoritative. Because it's time to take the next step. In a few weeks, we'll be conducting a special, intensive training exercise. It won't be here in the gym. He gestured vaguely towards the north end of the campus. We'll be using a specialized facility, a state-of-the-art training dome. It's a controlled environment designed to simulate extreme and unpredictable conditions. The teachers will be throwing challenges at you and your classmates that you cannot possibly anticipate. It will test not just your power, young Midoriya, but your adaptability, your ingenuity, and your ability to lead and work with your peers under immense pressure. The news sent a fresh jolt of excitement and nerves through Izuku. A specialized dome. Unpredictable challenges. His mind, ever the analyst, immediately began worrying with possibilities, his muttering starting up about potential terrain simulations and team-based combat scenarios. But beneath the hero student's excitement, a different, warmer current flowed. He glanced towards the gym entrance, where he knew Ochaco would soon be waiting to walk back to the dorms with him. This new challenge, this special training, wasn't just another hurdle. It was the next stage. And for the first time, he wouldn't be facing it with just the ghost of a legacy on his shoulders. He would be facing it with a secret promise in his heart and the memory of cherry blossoms soft against his skin. The announcement of the special training dome sent a wave of palpable excitement through Class 1A. The common room was abuzz with theories and boasts. Kirishima was already pumping his fists, declaring it the manliest test yet, while Kaminari Nishido speculated wildly about zero-gravity chambers or lava-filled moats. Iida chopped the air with precise, enthusiastic gestures, outlining hypothetical teamwork protocols. Even Bakugo, though he scoffed, had a sharp, competitive glint in his eyes. It was a welcome distraction, a collective goal that united them in anticipation. For Izuku and Ochaco, that week of waiting was something else entirely. It was a secret, golden time, stolen between classes and training sessions. Their dates were nothing grandiose, but everything to them. They were study sessions in the library where more glances were exchanged than notes. They were shared lunches on a secluded bench in the school gardens, their knees barely touching, sending jolts of electricity through them both. They were quiet walks around the campus perimeter after dark, their hands occasionally, hesitantly, brushing against each other before one would finally, bravely, link their fingers together. Each moment was a treasure, a silent affirmation of the new, wonderful world they were building together, hidden from everyone else. One such evening, Izuku was in his dorm room, a contented smile on his face as he idly scrolled through hero news on his computer. The screen was filled with the usual reports of patrols and minor villain takedowns. But then, a cluster of headlines on a side feed caught his eye, sending a familiar, cold dread trickling down his spine. Underworld rumors swirl, disparate factions growing restless. Hesse aftermath, a power vacuum in the shadows. Analysts point to increased coordination among lesser villain groups. His analyst's mind, always active, immediately latched onto that patterns. He clicked on the articles, his brow furrowing. The reports were vague, citing unnamed sources and an increase in chatter on the criminal underworld's dark web equivalents. But one name, mentioned only in passing in a single, speculative piece, made his blood run cold. Some unverified whispers even suggest the involvement of figures previously thought to be lying low, such as the mysterious Shigaraki. The single name was like a splash of ice water on the warm, happy bubble he had been living in. The contented smile vanished from his face, replaced by the stern, focused expression of the boy who carried the world's greatest secret. The memory of the USJ, of the blue-haired, hand-covered villain with a touch that could decay anything, flashed in his mind. The casual, world-ending malice in Shigaraki's voice. He wasn't just a villain, he was the successor to All for One. And if he was becoming active again, if he was truly starting to coordinate other villain factions, Izuku leaned back in his chair, the excitement about the training dome suddenly feeling distant and trivial. He stared at the screen, the happy memories of his week with Uraraka now juxtaposed with the grim, looming shadow of a threat he knew was far from over. The path to being a hero was not just about training and secret dates. It was also about watching the darkness, waiting for it to stir. And he, more than anyone in this entire school, knew just how deep and terrifying the darkness could be. The contented warmth that had settled in Izuku's chest over the past week had now been replaced by a cold, heavy knot of dread. The single mention of Shigaraki's name in the news report had shattered the peaceful illusion. He couldn't ignore it. He couldn't just be a happy student, not when he knew what lurked in the shadows, waiting for its chance to destroy everything All Might had built. Later that night, under the guise of a final walk before curfew, he led Ochaco to the secluded spot in the cherry blossom grove. The atmosphere was different now, tense where it had been giddy just days before. "Uraraka," he began, his voice low and serious, his usual stutter absent under the weight of his concern. "I saw something on the Hero News today. Rumors about Shigaraki." He didn't need to explain further. He saw the understanding dawn in her eyes, the memory of the USJ and the palpable evil of that day flashing between them. She knew what that name meant to him, to All Might, to the entire world. I can't just do nothing," he continued, his hands clenching at his sides. "If he's really becoming active again, All Might needs to know immediately. Not through official channels, it might be slow, but directly." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, sleek device. It was no bigger than a coin, crafted from the same dark blue alloy as his Energy Diffusion Glove, with a single, tiny green light on its surface. "Melissa, she sent me this along with the glove," he explained, holding it out on his palm. "It's a single-use, encrypted emergency beacon. It's linked directly to a receiver All Might carries. If you press this button," he pointed to a nearly flash button on its side, "it will send a high-priority alert with a GPS location. No message, just a signal. Our signal. For him." He took her hand, his touch gentle but firm, and placed the small beacon in her palm, closing her fingers over it. His eyes, wide and earnest, boring to hers. "I need you to keep this. Always. If you see anything that seems connected to him, or if you feel you're in any danger and it might be related, press it. Don't hesitate. It will bypass everything and go straight to him." Ochaco looked down at the small, cool metal disc in her hand. It felt incredibly heavy, not with physical weight, but with the immense trust and the terrifying responsibility he was placing on her. This wasn't just a token of affection, it was a vital piece of the shared, dangerous secret. He was entrusting her with a direct line to the symbol of peace, a lifeline for a threat only they truly understood the depth of. She curled her fingers tightly around the beacon, her expression shifting from surprise to one of fierce determination. She met his gaze and gave a single, solid nod. "I understand," she said, her voice steady. "I'll keep it safe. I promise." In the moment, amidst the quiet, fallen blossoms, their secret relationship deepened into something more. It was a partnership, a pact. They were no longer just two students in love. They were two allies standing watch on the front lines of a hidden war, bound together by a power, a promise, and now, a small, silent beacon of hope and warning.